Hello and welcome to Sake Revolution, America's first sake podcast. I am your host, John Puma, sake nerd at large, founder of the sakenotes.com, and administrator of the internet Sake Discord.
And I'm your host, Timothy Sullivan. I'm a sake samurai, sake educator, as well as the founder of the Urban Sake website. And together, John and I will be tasting and chatting about all things sake. So, John, our stay-at-home orders are still in effect. I have to know, how is your sake supply holding up?
Well, so I received the shipment on Wednesday, and I ordered it a little while ago because you had a lot of these a lot of delivery places are taking a large volume of orders, and so you had to plan ahead. And so, in trying to plan ahead, I made a second order earlier this week. And that second order, I assumed would take like a week and a half or 2 weeks to arrive.
And what happened with that order?
Tim, it's going to be here tomorrow, and I will officially have too much sake.
Now, is there such a thing as too much sake? Do you have room in your refrigerator?
I'll need to make some decisions, and maybe I don't need all of this food. But,
well, whatever you do, you have to keep an eye on your sake stash.
Is somebody going to steal my sake, Tim?
Well, today on the show, we have a real honest-to-goodness ninja popping in.
Oh, you must be talking about that Chris Johnson, the famous sake ninja.
That is right. Let's welcome Chris onto the show right now. Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm super excited to be a part of the sake revolution.
Yes. You can be a subversive revolutionary with the rest of us.
Sweet.
So I do have a very first important question for you. How did you get the moniker Sake Ninja?
I was going to ask that one, Tim. You beat me to it.
This is an interesting story. It's actually based off of the Sake Samurai title that I now share with you, Mr. Sullivan. But it came about from early on in the Sake Samurai existence, and I had been living in New York, working in sake for almost 10 years at the time. And in 2008, around beginning of 2009, or around that time in general, many brewers would come and visit from different places. I was running Bond Street and my own restaurants and things like that at the time. And they would introduce me to brewers that I hadn't quite met yet. And every time they'd start out with, "Oh, this is Chris Johnson. He's a sake samurai." And I'd have to, because of having all that experience of living in Japan and speaking Japanese, I'd politely bow and say, "Oh, well, thank you very much for thinking I have this honor, but I have not yet to receive that honor, but I truly appreciate your thoughts." And if it had happened once a year, I would have laughed it off and thought it was funny, but it was happening like, a good 15, 20, 30 times. And at one point, I was out with a bunch of said brewers, and I was at Decibel, and now we'd had quite a bit of sake. And as you are when you're at Decibel, you're already on Sanjikai or Yojikai, which is third or fourth party. So things are really, you're hitting stride, as they say. And it started to happen, and I got up from the table as somebody started to do it, and I said, "I'm not a samurai, I'm a ninja." And I went down to a ninja's cot, and I said, "I'm not in the front, I'm in the background. I just make sake happen. You never see me." And they were like, "What do you mean?" I said, "John, ask Tim." And you turned to ask Tim, and I filled the cup with sake that was sitting in front of you. And you came back, and I said, "See, ninja." And then the ninja was born. And that was where it went from that point forward.
So. That is all right. That is the best story for an origin of a title that I think I've heard in a long time.
Yeah. And then I made a company out of it. So there you go.
Hey, excellent. And how did what was your introduction to this? How did you get into this world of sake?
I was exposed to sake mostly when I lived in Japan. I was on a program called the JET program that a few of our sake geek mates, Jamie Graves, Philip Harper, John Gottner, amongst many others, were past JET individuals. And I was exposed to it there, and then I came back in 1996 after having my first daiginjo at my farewell party. They were like, "Here, we're getting rid of you. Have a nice bottle of sake. Don't come back." And I shared it with everybody there, and I tasted it and went, "Wow, this is phenomenal. I need to learn more about this beverage." So when I got back in 96 and started working as a prep cook at a Japanese restaurant in Midtown, I started studying sake for real.
And so most of your experience and exposure came after you left Japan, then.
Yes, especially to the higher quality sakes and what we refer to as premium sake, or jinmais, ginjos, and daiginjos.
That actually makes me a little bit sad, kind of discovering premium sake on the day you're leaving Japan after 1 year.
3 years.
3 years. Oh wow!
Well, but you've made up for it in the meantime.
I definitely have made up for the meantime. I mean, even in the times of being home in isolation, I've made up with it with quite a few bottles, sharing them with quite a few different people through these webinars and seminars and things.
So I know you've done a lot of different types of work in the sake industry. Can you give us a little overview of the type of work that you've done to represent sake in different ways?
Sure. In the very beginning, most of my experience was through working on the floor as a sommelier at various different restaurants, and then creating sake lists when I was working on other restaurants. Worked for some restaurants here in New York City. Then I also promoted sake a little bit more through my own restaurants that are no longer in existence, but I had a couple restaurants here in New York. And then have been lucky enough, kind of the real aha, oh my gosh, maybe I should do this more seriously moment came in 1999 when I got invited to be a participant in the first ever international sake sommelier competition in Tokyo, where a good friend of mine, and I will keep her nameless, invited me to do it. And she basically said, "We need a non-Japanese person from New York, and you're the only one I know who does sake." And so I was like, "Oh, okay, great, let's go."
We need a token foreigner. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, never. You never hear that when you're in Japan for stuff. We just need you to stand in the corner. You don't even need to talk. We just want you there. So they sent me over, and long story short, I ended up coming in third place of like 170 people in the whole competition. And I went, oh, wow, maybe I'm better at this than I thought I was. I should probably take it a little bit more seriously. And so that launched me into more aspects of, from that, I've been a judge at the U.S. National Sake Appraisal for 17 years, at IWC for 5. I'm on the board for the Joy of Sake and help plan that every year in New York and Hawaii. And am also currently working as a board member of the American Sake Association, where we're trying to continue education and promotion of sake through our nonprofit.
Great. Now, you mentioned that you've been having a lot of sake and talking about a lot of sake with the new normal of Zoom webinars. And I think on a previous episode, Tim and I talked about them a little bit and gave the Japanese name of the onnomi. How has that switch, how have you adapted to that switch?
It's great to see people. That's one of the things that, not being able to interact with people, having a phone call or whatever is all intriguing to share thoughts. But when you actually can see another person's face and have that kanpai and see laughter, right? Part of the enjoyment that makes us all happy is when you have a smile, when the person across you smiles, whether you're at a bar or at dinner. But even through the webinar, you can have that reaction when you see each other. And I think that's helped me be able to deal with it. I've never been a big drinker at home, unless it's a party or I'm having people over for dinner. But myself grabbing a bottle and partaking has never really been something I did very much of. And now with this, I have a lot of sake at home. And now being able to share, hey, we're drinking Masumi today, or hey, we're drinking Hakai-san today. It gives me this opportunity to share really great beverages with other people and talk about them. I think that's been really, really great considering the situation we're all in.
That's great. And I was wondering, just in general, all kind of sales and partnerships aside, what kind of sake are you drawn to personally? Like if kind of the desert isle question, if you had to bring one sake with you, if you were stuck on a desert island, what not a brand name, but what kind of sake would you want to bring with you?
Yamahai or Kimoto Junmai all day long.
Okay, we haven't covered those on our education corner yet, but that is, let me describe, kind of funky, earthy, bold, correct?
Yes.
That's your style?
Yeah, I mean, I think mostly because I love the elegant sakes, I love the clean sakes, but after a while, sometimes it becomes overwhelming with too much thought process. For me, I think I never get bored of the depth that the Yamahai and the Kimotos give me when they're cold or when they're warm, or the breadth of what I can enjoy them with. And I don't think I would get palate fatigue and or tired of that style of sake, which is why I would say if Tim, you were to banish me to a deserted island and told me only one style of sake, I would choose that.
It's very considerate of Tim to banish you to a desert island and also give you a steady supply of one type of sake.
Yes, I appreciate that.
And tying into that question, it doesn't have to be with that funky, earthy style, but what are, I think this is a separate question from your favorite style of sake. What are some of your favorite sake and food pairings? You know, with any style of sake, but I think everyone always has those home run pairings that they really love. What are some of your favorites?
I think one of the components of sake pairing in general that I kind of fall in love with is every time I sip a sake, I think about what I want to eat with it. And it's not always the same thing. But I certainly love the way cheese and sake interact. It's always been one of my fun, especially game changer for people that are coming around to sake for the first time, or, oh, I don't understand it, or, okay, here's a really easy way for me to get you into this topic. Let's have some cheese and sake. And now, not every cheese and every sake dance in the same circle, but it is a quite easy pairing to get people's heads around. I think Yamahai with either pasta carbonara or with pizza are some of my favorite kind of "what'd you just do to me" pairings, like where people look at you like you're crazy. Those are a couple of my favorites there. And then semi leaning back towards the classics is like I love getting a Junmai ginjo that has some nice, pretty fruit and pairing it with a pan-seared scallop, right? Where you're getting a little bit of richness from texture pairing with richness of texture, and natural sweetness pairing with natural sweetness. And that's another one of my favorite pairings. Are you hungry yet?
I'm getting a little hungry. Yeah. So I understand that we've all brought sake today, and we're not going to be drinking it just yet. But I believe that a moment, and I believe though that the commonality between them is Gunma Prefecture, and I think that Gunma is a place that makes a lot of great sake, and a lot of people don't think about Gunma as much as maybe they should. Have you guys ever been over to Gunma?
I have not been there yet. It's on my list of places I'd really like to go visit.
Yeah, I have not been to Gunma either, but it is perhaps a little bit of description for our listeners. It's right next to Niigata. It's about an hour north of Tokyo, and it's one of the landlocked prefectures, so it doesn't have access to the ocean. As far as the sake scene there, I think at my last count, there's about 20 or 22 breweries in Gunma right now. So when we do our tasting, we're going to be sampling 3 different Gunma breweries. And I think this will be a series that John and I will continue to feature periodically sakes from different prefectures around Japan. This is going to be the first of several episodes to come that feature different prefectures.
Yeah, it's a intriguing prefecture. One of the 8 landlocked ones, as Tim just mentioned, but quite mountainous on most of Gunma, other than that part that's attached to Ibaraki and Saitama, where it's a little bit more of the open plain. But really kind of great snow, all those things that we talk about that make an area great for making sake and producing great rice. Diurnal range, plenty of snow, plenty of cold winters to produce really high quality sake. So although it's not known as well as we think it should be, it is a great place to make sake.
Yeah, my one and only exposure to Gunma was like, taking a train through it on my way to Niigata. I didn't realize that we'd be going through there, and we stop at one of the stations, and the announcement comes over that we're at Gunma Station. I'm like Gunma's over here? Oh. All right, put a note. Next time we should stop into Gunma for a while because I really love the sake from there. Note that to date we have not made good on that promise, but one of these days, provided we're allowed to travel again, it's on the list.
Definitely.
Yeah. Maybe we should make a plan that we all just meet in Gunma on our next sake adventure.
Yes, and then we can do an episode from Gunma. So it'll be the second part of this one in a way.
Yes, we can do the Gunma, the sequel.
Yes, there you go. All right, so Tim, what have you brought along today?
Yeah, let's all introduce our sakes first. I have a sake that I've actually never had before. I recently picked it up. Oh. It is called Akagi-san Daiginjo. So Akagi-san is a very famous mountain in Gunma, Akagi-yama, Akagi Mountain. And this brewery is in the watershed of that mountain. So the water comes from Akagi Mountain, and this is a Daiginjo grade sake. So when we talked about the classifications recently, Daiginjo was that alcohol added super premium grade. And the rice milling rate for this particular bottle is 38% remaining. So this is a little bit of a splurge bottle for myself, but I thought for the Sake Ninja, I'm going to bust it out and we're going to enjoy some of the top quality from Gunma. And the brewery name is Kondo Shuzo, Kondo Brewery. And so it's Akagi-san. That's what I've got. CJ, how about you? What do you have?
So thank you very much for spending the extra money on me, Tim. I appreciate it. So for me today, I have a sake called Seitoku Jinmai Ginjo. And it's from close to those plains, a little bit down south, close to Mount Yogi that you had mentioned before. A really interesting brewery formed in 1959 as a collaboration between 4 different small breweries that have now created this brand to produce sake in harmony is the way they describe it. So small breweries that were Yokoyama Shuzoten, Fuzawa Shuzoten, Kanra Shuzo, and then Baba Shuzoten, all in the small towns surrounding where the new Seitoku facility is now. Super cool, very in what they often describe Gunma style. It's subdued, meant to kind of just create a beautiful balance. They make a really wonderful sake here, but they're not necessarily the big, lots of ginjo flavors and lots of those impactful melon notes, just a little bit more kind of a subtle confluence of really wonderful flavors.
And which bottle did you bring from them?
So I brought their Jinmai Ginjo, which is known as Trapeza here in the United States. John, what are you going to be drinking with us tonight?
So I went and got the Mizubasho Ginjo, and Mizubasho is from a brewery called Nagai Shuzo, and it is a little north of Mount Akagi, and these guys make that Gunma style. It's very crisp. It's very nice. It's we'll get into a little bit more when I start sipping it, but this is always a kind of a sake that I always think is very pleasant and relaxing to drink.
And John, that's a Ginjo sake you have there, right?
Yeah.
So another alcohol added style. It's not the Junmai style. It's just Ginjo. Why don't you go ahead, John, and you can taste first.
While I'm opening this up, I'll mention that this one is using Yamada Nishiki, and it's polished to 50%. So people who got in on our episode about sake grades will recognize that this could, if they really wanted to, be considered a Daiginjo. But in this case, probably for flavor profile reasons, they went for Ginjo. And the aroma on this is actually really, really kind of light and subtly fruity, very, very elegantly fruity. Like not, I believe in previous episodes we talked about sakes that had more of like a ripe fruit or almost overripe fruits and just like really coming at you. Whereas this is more of like you think there's fruit in the other room, but you're not sure.
That famous wafting melon.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. You're much more articulate than I am. And as far as the taste goes, it's very light, a little bit sweet coming in, and then a sudden dry finish just comes out of nowhere, and then you're good. And it's why it's just really pleasant to just sip on. This is a great sipping sake, which
Awesome.
I'm going to continue to do probably for the rest of the show.
Are you getting any ricey elements, or is it more fruit driven?
Very slight, not a lot. There's not a lot of rice to this at all. It's a little bit fruit, and then again, just that the dryness at the end, and it's so crisp and dominating. It's really nice.
So a really clean finish.
Very
awesome, cool. So CJ, how about you? Would you like to pour your glass and give us your impressions?
Sure.
Of a seitoku. So this again is the Junmai Ginjo, right?
It is the Junmai Ginjo, so no alcohol added. I can smell the elegance from here. I haven't even brought it to my nose yet.
So you said there were 4 breweries that came together. Is it a co-op where they're all still independent, or did they join?
In my research, it's become one brewery. So they kind of consolidated, even though they were separate beforehand, and they may have been able to say separate for a while, but I think in present day, it's become just a single brewery. So this sake, similar to what John described in his, this was milled to 50%, so could also be classified as a daiginjo if they chose. It's made from that rice that I know John learned about and in his counting skills get improved. It's made from gohyaku.
Mangoku.
Oh, very good. There you go. Just wanted to, make sure he was still learning. And even though we didn't have the education corner this time, we did get to make sure he was paying attention. They use yeast 1801 and 1901 in producing this, which normally would produce quite a lot of those floral ginjo notes. But again, because of the subdued style of this brewery, you're getting them, and it's pretty and elegant, but it's not in your face. Yeah, really soft floral, just a touch of when you just slice open a honeydew, you haven't really dug into it yet, but you're getting just a very soft, as Tim said, wafting melon aroma.
So that seems like a little bit of a commonality between John's sake and your sake, CJ.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've noticed in drinking good masakes and trying them is that obviously there's always an exception to the general rule as such, but they are relatively subtle sakes. And that harmony between the aroma and the taste is a goal that they have, and maybe because of the water and just their style, a lot of salted food back in the day because they are a landlocked area. And so maybe that played into part of the style of being more subtle flavors to balance out with the food. But on the palate, really clean, again, just crisp, a tiny touch of almost like Asian pear. Yeah, light melon, a little bit of strawberry, and then a touch of rice. Just like a really clean cooked rice or steamed rice, like a bowl of steamed rice that's got no influence of anything else, nothing on it, just like freshly cooked steamed rice, just a nice little delicate bite. That's kind of where this is taking me.
Sounds nice.
Yeah. So Tim, what's in your glass this evening?
Well, again, I have the Akagi-san Daiginjo. And this has, as I mentioned before, a rice milling rate of 38% remaining. And that is very, very small, luxurious milling rate. And I think for sure this is the lowest, most premium milling rate we've had on the show so far. We've had a lot of Junmais and Honjozos. And this is, I think, our first Daiginjo. So I'm going to give it a smell.
I believe you're right about that, and
Yeah.
it is by far, I think, the lowest we've had.
Well, the aroma is actually really restrained. I'm actually a little surprised. I thought, on paper, this would be a little bit more exuberant, but the aroma is really tight and really restrained. Very gentle, fruity notes, but I'm actually getting a bit more floral as well, like a little lilac and white flower, kind of a very gentle floral aromatics. It's lovely, but it's very delicate. I'm going to give it a taste.
I would say the sake I had also falls into that delicate component.
Yeah. So this has a very rich texture. Sometimes I refer to sakes as velvety, and that is the word that popped into my head. I don't know for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if they had aged this sake for a year. It tastes a little bit on the rich side, velvety, but silky smooth. And it has a quiet finish. There's a bit of a lingering finish here, but very quiet and gentle. For me, the texture really predominates. The flavors are very gentle. As you both said, very, very mild fruits. This is going to be the new trademark of Gunma Sake. Wafting melon.
That wafting melon.
Yeah, so very gentle, but it has a sexy, elegant side to it. You can tell that this has some thought behind it as far as the structure of the sake and the texture. And I'm getting in the wine glass, I'm getting a nice viscosity clinging to the side of the glass. So a very nice, rich body, but super gentle aroma and super silky texture. Really great Daiginjo.
Sounds like pretty beautiful sakes all around today.
Yeah. And one thing we like to talk about, CJ, is also what we would pair with these sakes. I know you're more of a chef than John and myself, and I've seen your Instagram, so I know what you're cooking at home. What would you pair with that seitoku you have in front of you?
So I think I could go a couple ways, actually. If we were going to stay in the Japanese kind of thought process, this is going to be beautiful with just like a simple sashimi. And if we're going to take it to a slightly different place, would be like a tiradito or a ceviche in the more European aspect of it versus the thicker chunks, like a nicely thinly sliced, almost tiradito type thing with just a touch of citrus on top. I think would do really well with that. A little pinch of like a micro herb on top, because there's just a little hint of herbaceousness in the back of this sake now that it's starting to pop through. I think that would be wonderful. I also like the idea of putting this with a little bit of pork chop. That because when you cook a pork chop with simply with butter and light herbs, the little bit of fat that's on pork actually becomes a little bit sweet and gives you kind of fruity flavors. And I think this sake would help support and elevate those notes in the pork and would really accentuate those flavors. So I would put it up next to a cast iron seared pork chop with a touch of thyme in the butter.
We all need more time, don't we?
I gave it. That was a volleyball.
Oh, okay.
Ugh.
Tim, what about you?
Okay, so Daiginjos are very elegant, very silky, and this one certainly lives up to that reputation. There's a few ways you could go with this. When I come across really elegant, velvety Daiginjos like this, I don't think about too much protein or anything with a char or smoke on it at all. I go more for like crab salad or some lighter dish with a bit of umami in there. And I also like to drink a sake like this, super elegant, Really, really delicious. I like to have this before dinner, like as an aperitif, because you want your palate to be as sharp as possible when you taste these expensive, super interesting, super premium sakes. And I like to have a small glass of this before dinner, really let it enliven my palate, almost like a liquid appetizer.
Love that.
So that's one way I enjoy these.
Love that. I always laugh with friends when it comes to, people always break out the really good stuff after they've already drank 5 or 6 bottles. And I'm like, no, open the good one early, because then we can actually appreciate it. At worst case scenario, the good one should be bottle 2, but waiting until the end that you're like, okay, fine, I'm going to open that really special Daginjo, and no one knows what they drank.
I have been guilty of that. And I have also been the guy that says, no, wait. So what I'm trying to say is that I'm maturing.
Excellent. So, John, speaking of maturing, what would you pair with this particular sake that you have?
All right. So I have a very, very specific dish that popped into my head when I was sipping this. And it's sauteed broccoli with like garlic and oil and and a little bit of pasta in it. Like that kind of, very light. It's still very light. It's the oil is going to, I think, complement the dryness of the sake nicely. They're not going to get in the way of each other. This sake is very light, so I'm worried about giving it anything with too much of a aggressive flavor. But I think something like that would go a long way with it, and it's also making me very hungry.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Are you cooking tonight? Or are we headed over there? What's going on?
We'll just we'll get out in one chair in each corner of the apartment, and we'll slide plates across the floor at each other.
I'm in. Well, I can't wait to actually sip sake in person with you all again soon. So again, thank you very much for letting me join the Sake Revolution tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about my experience and the wonderful sakes of Gunma, but I have noticed, and this is a long time for me, I had sipped sake, but I had yet to say kanpai to you two wonderful people. As I said, I look forward to cheersing with you in person again, but for now, can we do it across the airwaves?
I think we can do that, Tim.
Absolutely.
All right.
Here's to you. Kanpai. Well, thank you, Chris, so much for joining us. And thank you all so much for tuning in. If you can, please take a moment to rate our show on Apple Podcasts.
And make sure to subscribe wherever you download your podcast so that you won't miss an episode.
And as always, to learn more about any of the topics or sakes we talked about in today's episode, be sure to visit our website, sakerevolution.com, for the detailed show notes.
And to send your feedback or show ideas, drop us an email anytime at feedback@sakerevolution.com. So until next time, remember to keep drinking sake and
Kanpai!